Let's talk a bit more about Sayl. I've already featured him at least a little bit in one of my replays, but today here he is in all his girthy glory atop his mammoth. I mean, Sayl himself is not all that girthy, to be fair, but he is a caster lord for Norsca. Of course, they also get the generic shaman sorcerer lords, but he has a mixed, what is it, shadows and heavens lore right now. My opponent here only bringing the Wind Blast spell. He also has this Shalkane's Teeth, which is a very good character sniping ability. Great for sniping anything like horse character, even monstrous mount character like on the ground. Yeah, we'll talk more about that in a little bit. And then the Night Maw. So, yeah, this is not great, in my opinion. For a lot of different reasons, but generally, I am really not a fan of this implementation of the Night Maw. Should have been a summon, really. The Night Maw is a sort of unique legendary spawn that's associated with Sayl, and instead of it being a summon, we get this little wind effect, which is decent, has a pretty small area of effect, but it definitely encroaches on the battle territory of Wulfric. He is just going to be completely superseded by Sayl at this point. I'd have to double check the numbers. Maybe we'll look at it after the fact. But yeah, it's not great. I'm really not a fan of that. But what it means is that Sayl is a really strong anti-infantry lord. The rest of the army here, my opponent with a Cursed Etten Rune Collar. We looked at the regular Cursed Etten last time. This one has a similar type of ability where over 50%... it has one ability, under 50% has another ability. Yeah, the spell mastery minus 10% and negates magical weapons within a 20-meter radius while he's above 50% HP. Nice to synergize with some physical resistance, like on the Warshrine Mammoth, for example, right? That Sayl's riding. And then, of course, below 50% HP, it gets heal, but it also gets power recharge, and more importantly, power reserves. So there's definitely a situation where you lead with this guy, take some damage on him initially, and then feast on some Winds of Magic. Of course, he's also got some balance spells, being a Rune Collar, Bound Flock of Doom, Doom and Darkness, and Enfeebling Foe. The rest of the build here, he's got some Marauder Bearmen up front, a couple of Famir, great weapons for anti-large, Chimera up in the sky, some Marauder Spearmen scattered around. And then for me, I'm playing as Slaanesh. I've got the 2 Regiment of Renown chariots. The Sibyl Slaughtercade were from Champions of Chaos. And then the new one, the Heralds of Excess. They've got Perfect Vigor as Seeker Chariots. That's nice. And I don't know, I think that's basically all they get. It's just Perfect Vigor, which is great, don't get me wrong, for a chariot unit. Note they also have increased armor as well. I forget the armor of the base armor of the Seeker Chariots, but something tells me it's not 70. Anyway, you've got some Marauder Horsemen as well, and of course, 2 Pleasure Seekers for the main power piece of the army, a Sorcerer of Shadows in the back, and the Mask. We haven't seen him yet on the channel, so let's go ahead and take a look. The Mask of Slaanesh is a dancer, a tiny dancer, yes. In for a grand old time, and it's got different dances that you can take. I actually only took this one because I think it's probably the best. Turns him into a little Mortis engine. You can see it's mutually exclusive with the other ones, but when you're picking him in multiplayer, you can choose whether or not you want to buy the other dances. So I figured I'd just cut the costs. You also have the Staff of Masks, which damages an enemy and basically steals their health, right? You cast this on an enemy, and it damages them, heals him, damages their vigor, restores his vigor. So very, very cool. Decent effects. I don't think he has any mount choices, but decent duelist overall in terms of his stats. Armor piercing, anti-infantry. So let's get things rolling as... yeah, we're going to get a nice little chariot charge initially into the front line, then disengage as the second wave crashes. Pleasure Seekers tumbling into the Famir. Getting some really nice damage initially. You see Sayl loading up his cannon. He's going to fire a shot. And look at the amount of damage on the Mask. I mean, almost half his HP in one shot. Absolutely insane. It's very, very strong. Like I said, for character sniping, like foot characters or horse characters, particularly like a caster on a horse, even a caster on like an eagle maybe is going to have a hard time with that. But nice breath attack from the Chimera. And yeah, Pleasure Seekers just absolutely ripping through the Famir before they go ahead and disengage. We're going to see the Nightmaw unleashed. Oh, did you see it? Did you see it? That's... There it is. That's it. Yep. All that work creating that beautiful model, and it's seen for like 0.5 seconds as it races across the battlefield. Yeah, again, really not a fan of how the Nightmaw was implemented. Pleasure Seekers once more charging in. Chimera responds to help aid the Famir. And Pleasure Seekers once more must cycle out and then cycle back in. My opponent winning the infantry fight pretty decisively here, except out on the far flank. I'm able to get my chariots going along with the devoted marauders. Able to beat back a few of these Norscan marauders, and then we're going to switch directions into the center. Pleasure Seekers continue cycle charging out on the opposite flank. Oh yeah. It is nice that the Sibilant Slaughtercade Regiment Renown is also pulled by the steeds. Seeker Steeds. A little bit of shades there for my Shadowcaster to deal damage to more of the Bearmen and other infantry. And we're going to pull up the Marauder Horsemen close and throw some javelins at the Rune Caller. And right now they are feasting in terms of value, but the Rune Caller also calling in more magic for Sayl as he continues to Wind Blast his way to attempted victory, at least. The Mammoth, of course, just such a strong anti-infantry piece, always has been. And the War Shrine Mammoth in particular means he gives AoE physical resistance, which again synergizes nicely with the Rune Caller. Right now it's already 50% charged up for a nice little 5% physical resistance to everything nearby, extra vigor refresh as well. Of course, this will matter a lot against some factions and very little against other factions. But the fact you can kind of pair him with the Rune Caller and try and negate those magical weapons. Although right now... Yeah, I don't know. Are either of these passives actually active on the Rune Caller? Hard to say. I don't actually see them in the active effects here on the side. Maybe it's bugging out a little bit. But anyway, I guess the hit points are slightly greater than 10% HP, so should have that other first dual personality. But regardless... Loads up the cannon again, and yeah, the mask just gets absolutely blasted by Sayl. I did pop his ability to heal himself at one point, but didn't make enough of a difference. He took some damage in a few different engagements there, like from the Chimera and so forth, and yeah, just gets absolutely blasted by Sayl. Now it's up to the Chaos Sorcerer to try and lead my army to victory. Chariots continue to try and do whatever damage they can. And the Pleasure Seekers... back once more for some fun. Gonna try and rely on that Feasting and Fear in this late game to keep them sustained on the battlefield. Oops, and OBS crashed. Anyway, as I was saying, I do have a replay with the Demons of Chaos where I take a Nurgle caster and attempt to heal Pleasure Seekers just straight up, but that's for another day. For today, watch as the Rune Caller and the Mammoth and Sayl all make their stand here, stomping out the chariots. Yeah, the Heralds of Excess, being demonic, are going to just die of sadness. And then the Sibilant Slaughtercade will continue fighting. They were actually able to disengage there. But my opponent down to just his single entities, pretty much. And it's going to take some aggressive cycle charging from these Pleasure Seekers to try and finish things off. So we'll throw the chariots in there as a little bit of a mass distraction at certain points. Oh man, the Rune Caller getting like half that breath attack to both of his heads. Their heads? What's the correct pronoun for a Rune Caller? Or an etten? Do let me know. Is it a they? Anyway. Yeah, this Chaos Sorcerer also on the Demonic Steed mount. Oh no, actually he's not. He's just on a regular horse mount. That's okay. He doesn't have any armor-piercing damage. Still has Devastating Flanker, though, and some charge. I try and cycle charge him in and out a little bit here as well. A little bit of Melkoth's Mystifying Miasma to try and finish off those spears. I was really wishing I had brought Enfeebling Foe at this point, which I definitely should have, but would have been nice to debuff these single entities as we try to take them out. The Eden Rune Caller in particular is proving quite difficult to kill, but I mean, all three of these single entities for Norsca are going to be pretty dangerous, so... Ooh, he's going to line up for a little snipe attempt as soon as the Chimera lands. Go ahead and rear charge. I mean, you know, the Horsemen also have Devastating Flanker, so why not throw them in here a little bit. Another Wind Blast. which the new VFX for Lore of Heavens do look quite good. This Windstruck contact effect also is new, minus acceleration speed and charge speed from Wind Blast. And you notice how much of a difference it makes as the Pleasure Seekers try and cycle out there. Well, maybe they didn't even have it active. Who knows how useful that will end up being, but it's something that's there. Both Pleasure Seekers getting quite low at this point. Got a handful more javelins, just finished off their last volley before getting charged by the Chimera. And besides the Pleasure Seekers, I don't have anything that has any hope of killing these single entities, so it's really up to them. One unit, though, taking a Wind Blast, low on leadership, getting poisoned as well. But, or no, they weren't getting poisoned, were they? No, I was going to say nothing on Norsca's poison, but we're going to hit army losses here. And Sayl will run for the hills right as this unit is getting demonic instability. So really just the one, the one Pleasure Seeker survives. And I take home a very narrow win there. And yeah, ultimately, a fun battle for sure. Really enjoyed. The chariots are, you know, chariots. They're not wildly effective these days, but they definitely helped tactically to kind of break up my opponent's formation here. Yeah, the Marauder Horsemen, of course, get some good value thrown at some big high-value targets. Pleasure Seekers are, like I said, the main component that's going to carry my army. And with good micro, they definitely are almost unstoppable. And then, yeah, Devoted Marauders are basically glorified speed bumps here. His mask gets horribly sniped by Sayl, who himself almost 3,500 damage value, 25,000 damage dealt. I mean, he is the anti-infantry king at this point with all of his AoE damage potential. And the Mammoth Mount, of course. Chimera also has a great performance. The Rune Collar, it's alright. This is one of the better performances I've seen from it. I mean, these giant-type monsters can be a little bit tricky to use in practice against a lot of factions because their vulnerability to range damage. This one at least gives you some benefit as it's taking range damage, and, you know, the actual damage that it dealt in this particular battle was decent. I mean, it didn't pay for itself, but maybe the extra value that it's adding for Winds of Magic for Sayl helps him climb a little bit, so you could maybe siphon off some of his value to apply it to the Rune Collar. The rest of the army, I mean, largely just gets bulldozed by Slaanesh. Not really a lot else to talk about. One Famir gets some respectable value, it looks like. But yeah, really, Sayl was the main component. So let's go ahead and just do a quick comparison here. And I'll show you why I think that, yeah, Wulfric, there's basically no point in taking him anymore. So if we go ahead and go to Norsca, and we pull up Wulfric the Wanderer, so 2150 base cost on the Mammoth, whereas Sayl, come on Sayl, there we go. Sayl on the Mammoth is going to be 2600, so already that is a big difference, right? Sayl has a lot higher of a base cost, even without any of his, oh, he does have his items. Okay, let's take those off. Okay, only 2200. Okay, so not that much of a difference, actually. Wulfric is going to have 300 more health and like 4 more attack and defense, but he's not on the Warshrine Mammoth. He gets the Rage passive, which is decent, gives him a little self buff, but the Warshrine Mammoth is just a much better buff because it's an AoE, and also has a Vigor Refresh, which is super nice, and Leadership, you don't even have to charge that one up, the Leadership is just their base. So already, even without selecting any abilities or spells, the advantage I would give to Sayl, because Warshrine. And, yeah, and then we go into these abilities here. So, Wulfric's kit's the same as it always has been. I didn't look up the numbers for Seafang before. One of you guys can comment down below. Is this actually lower than it is in the live version of the game? But 56 damage with 35 AP versus a 50 damage with 60% AP. Granted, it's I think the Nightmaw has a smaller area of effect, so not going to be quite as good against big infantry lines. But of course, then Sayl's a caster, so you don't have to buy a secondary character to be your spellcaster. He has, like I said, a mix of Heavens and Shadows, which means Wind Blast, Venerable Pendulum. He did get Chain Lightning instead of Pit of Shades, which is worse, but it's there. But in particular, just the, the Wind Blast, the Pendulum, he also gets Thunderbolt as well. Not that that's a wildly useful spell, but it's, it's something you can take depending on the circumstance. If you're going for more, yeah, you can use this to snipe some different things as well. And then his other abilities, he's got, both lore attributes, Arcane Conduit, Backstabbing sorcery gives himself a map-wide little mini mortis every time an enemy casts a spell, but it only affects spellcasters. Weird, not very useful. I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something about this, but for 200 gold, I would definitely never take that. He also gets Fight or Die, so that's another thing from Wulfric that's just not, not unique. Wulfric does get Hunter of Champions for a really nice character debuff and Sword of Torgal, but in the character sniping department, you get access to the Viper's Staff. Or, sorry, no, Shalkane's Teeth, which just does damage. Arguably more useful for sniping a character than debuffing them. As long as it's like a horse character or a foot character, somebody with not a ton of HP, this is just going to be better, right? Because you don't have to do something else to do the damage. It just does the damage, right? Viper Staff. Oh, there we go. That's how something was getting poisoned. Okay. So every time you cast a spell with him, he gets poison, 20 damage reflection, which is decent for a big monster like a mammoth, not terrible. 20% damage resistance is quite nice. So that's definitely one that you would want to take, especially if you're just spamming Wind Blast. It does get Enfeebling Foe as well for a character debuff. It needs to fight something on the mammoth, or just a single target debuff, I should say. So, yeah, I mean, Sayl is just better than Wulfric in literally every way. I don't know at this point why you would ever take Wulfric, and that's sad. I mean, if Nightmaw was a summon, that would help. It would still probably be, more competitive, better to take Sayl in most situations, but at least if this was different, they would have a different flavor. As it is right now, he's just eating Wulfric's lunch, and that's it. So that's pretty sad. Really not happy with how this is implemented. Maybe if we make enough noise, we can get them to change it to a summon. Like Krell, for example. But anyway, that's my soapbox for today. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification. Every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Thanks again. We'll see you next time.